Hi everyone, this is Cecil, and on today's Yellowstone podcast, I'm going to try and answer a question that I see come up time after time on the various Yellowstone Facebook groups that I belong to, namely, how much time should I spend at Yellowstone National Park? And my question to you is, well, how much time do you have? Because you can, if you have the opportunity, spend just an endless amount of time in Yellowstone. Consider the following. So many of America's national parks have an incredible natural beauty, and Yellowstone is no exception. Some of the parks also have wildlife, which Yellowstone does as well. But what really sets Yellowstone apart are the so-called thermal features, the geysers, the hot springs, and two things called mud pots and fumaroles. And that is really what makes Yellowstone different. As is so often the case, I suggest that you watch this video on YouTube rather than listen to it on Google Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts, because I am going to be using a number of maps and other pictorial features. At the moment, I'm on a map which you can see at our motel site, which is ysmotel.com/map. So short for Yellowstone, ysmotel.com/map. And if we take a look at the map that you'll see there, you'll notice that the roads through Yellowstone make up a massive figure of 8. And when you're determining just how much time you want to spend in Yellowstone, my first suggestion to you is that you take a look at this map and realize that there are two gigantic loops which make up Yellowstone. Tour companies like ours call them the lower loop of Yellowstone and the upper loop of Yellowstone. And incidentally, if you're looking for a Yellowstone tour, please check out our site, yellowstonetours.net. But that is another story. So I would suggest that just to start off with, at the very minimum, spend one day on the lower loop of Yellowstone, spend another day on the upper loop of Yellowstone. I go through this in a lot more detail in various of our other podcasts and our other what we call virtual Yellowstone tours, which you can see in our YouTube channel. But just very briefly today, if you look at the lower loop, you can see there's this purple soft line that more or less follows the lower loop. And for reasons I'm not going to go into, that is one of the reasons why we find Yellowstone's main thermal areas, the main geyser basins around the lower loop. So when you're doing the lower loop, expect to see a lot of thermal features, a lot of geysers, hot springs, and then the two others that I mentioned to you, mud pots and fumaroles. There's also wildlife, and there's some incredibly beautiful scenery. So let's say you do that on the first day. Day 2, how about tackling Yellowstone's upper loop? Now, you'll notice that the upper loop is outside this purple line, which is what we call the caldera area, the gigantic hole in the ground that was left the last time the Yellowstone supervolcano erupted. So we're not going to find too much in the way of thermal features on the upper loop, but there is some incredibly beautiful scenery, and even more so the closer you get to the northeast entrance, as well as to Yellowstone's east entrance. And I know that the east entrance road runs off the lower loop, but I'm going to get back to that in a minute. You've got some incredible wildlife viewing opportunities. There's the chance of seeing wildlife elsewhere in this area. You've got Mammoth Hot Springs, which is where the park's headquarters are, and the upper terraces. Please take some time to have a look at our various other podcasts, because I'm not going to discuss this in a lot of detail here. Then, if you do have a third day, perhaps you can consider going down to Grand Teton National Park. If we have a look at the figure of 8 that makes up Yellowstone National Park, right at the very bottom of the lower loop, we'll see a road that leads down to the south entrance and then crosses over something called the Rockefeller Parkway. and we then get into Grand Teton National Park. If you're going to do Grand Teton National Park, please bear the following in mind. In my opinion, it's nowhere near as impressive as Yellowstone. It gets a lot of visitors because it's just to the south of Yellowstone, but if you do go down, in recent years we've been seeing a lot more grizzly bears in Grand Teton. You have a greater chance of seeing moose there, but the most spectacular aspect are the Grand Teton Mountains. So if you do go down to Grand Teton National Park, I strongly suggest that you go there on a day when it's sunny. The mountains rise up to almost 14,000 feet. So if it's a cloudy day, so much of the mountain is going to be covered, and it will ruin your experience a little. Let's say then that you do have some other time at your disposal. I mentioned that the closer you get to the eastern part of Yellowstone, the more impressive the scenery. So right over here where I'm circling, that's what's known as Fishing Bridge. And this is the road that will run from Fishing Bridge to Yellowstone's east entrance and then on to Cody, Wyoming. And as I mentioned before, the closer you get to Yellowstone's entrances on the east side, the more spectacular the scenery, because you're getting closer and closer to what's known as the Absaroka mountain range. If you're looking for it, it's spelled Absaroka, and I'm just looking for it on the map. Perhaps I'm not zoomed in sufficiently to see it, but anyway, you'll get closer and closer to the Absaroka Mountains, and the scenery really does get very spectacular. So if you do have some spare time, consider taking the road to the northeast entrance, and then consider taking the road to the east entrance as well, and possibly on to Cody, but I will get back to that. You can also take a much shorter road from Mammoth Hot Springs to Gardner, which is where the north entrance is. And as I say, that is a very short road, but very often you're going to see wildlife in that vicinity, just outside the park. If you're not staying in the town of West Yellowstone, if you do take the road to the west entrance, you are going to go through some really beautiful scenery in the Madison Valley. And then West Yellowstone is also worth a visit if you have time. And then again, I mentioned the road to the south entrance. Not a lot of thermal features on this, but there is some great scenery. There's some pretty lakes, the possibility of seeing wildlife as well. So let's say that you are considering spending extra time here. What else can you do? Well, I would strongly recommend spending more time in what's known as the Lamar Valley. And I'm going back to the map at our motel site, YS Motel, that's short for Yellowstone, ysmotel.com/map, and we can see where the Lamar Valley is. There is so much wildlife here, but equally importantly, this is possibly the best place in the entire world, not just Yellowstone, but in the entire world to see wolves. And the best time to see wolves will be at dawn and dusk. So if you would like to have an opportunity of seeing wolves, it would be best to stay in Cook City or Silvergate, or in Gardner, or if you can find lodging inside the park, perhaps at Roosevelt Lodge, which is not a lodge, but there are cabins there. And then come into the Lamar Valley. You can spend an enormous amount of time in the Lamar Valley as well. Then, while working out how much time you have at your disposal and how much time you want to spend in this area, consider that there are any number of great hikes that you can take. And if you go to our site, YellowstoneDayHikes.com, that's YellowstoneDayHikes.com, you'll see a lot of the more popular hikes, which you can take all over Yellowstone. Our hikes vary in length from 2 hours to a day. Try and come if you want to do hikes after the end of May, because so much of the great hiking area is closed off for what's called bear management. And that's something else that you should look at as well. If you go to Google and search for Yellowstone roads, The first link that's going to come up will be the Park Service site, and that'll show you a real-time map of which roads are open in Yellowstone. And if we look at the map, which I've got up now, we can see that the roads that are green are open. The one road that isn't open is closed because of construction. But if we scroll further down that page, you'll notice that the roads open in sequence. So depending on the time of the year that you're coming here, check to make sure that the roads are going to be open in the shoulder seasons, because that's going to impact how you spend your time in our area and also how much time you can spend here. I was telling you about the Lamar Valley being a wonderful place to see wolves, as well as other wildlife as well. Perhaps while you're in town, you want to do some photography. Obviously, there's endless opportunities, wildlife photography, but also sunrise and sunset photography. And if you're interested in doing sunrises or sunsets, well then perhaps spend a little bit of extra time so you have a greater chance of the weather being great. Then, you don't want to rush your visits to Yellowstone. There is just so much to see and do, and one area that I'd like to single out is the Old Faithful area. You can easily spend a couple of days in the Old Faithful area, and what I suggest you do is go to YouTube and just search for Upper Geyser Basin Trails, and the first link that should come up is from our channel, and we have got almost every single trail that you can do in the Upper Geyser Basin area. The one that I'm showing you here now is a little walk I took up to what's called Geyser Hill and then back down again, and making my way back through the thermal features. But you can easily spend a couple of days here, if not more. And then something else that you can spend time on as well that you should take into consideration is watching geysers erupt. Now, the geysers are not going to go off when you want them to. You have to wait for them. And the site that I like to use for geyser predictions is geysertimes.org. And of the 6 geysers that are regularly predicted, these first 5 here are all in the Upper Geyser Basin. So we can see that some of them have longer windows on either side than others, like Castle is 45 minutes either side, but I've seen Castle 4 hours either side. Grand Geyser is an hour either side. Old Faithful is generally going to be 10 minutes either side, but it could be anywhere from 7 minutes to 13 minutes. And the trails are wonderful. There is just so much to see and do. This little video I'm showing you at the moment is going up to Morning Glory Pool, which is one of the most iconic sites in the Upper Geyser Basin area. You can see this in our YouTube channel as well, and it's a very easy walk, slightly downhill, about 15 minutes, that'll get you from Old Faithful, which is where most of the parking is, down to Morning Glory Pool. So consider spending some time in the Upper Geyser Basin as well, and then perhaps allow a full day, or if you're a keen geyser watcher, maybe even a little bit longer as well. Let's say now that you've got 4 or even 5 days in our area. What I'd like to show you now are a couple of roads that you can take outside Yellowstone. Let's have a quick look at where Yellowstone is. Can you see the upper loop there? And the lower loop is here. You see where Yellowstone Lake is, and just to the northwest is the upper loop. Excuse me, the lower loop, then on top of it is the upper loop. Well, if you come to the northeast entrance, you can take a road to what's called Red Lodge. And this road is the Beartooth Highway. Now, when I mentioned to you that you have to be careful about what time you come, you'll notice that the Beartooth Highway this year is only opening on May the 28th. And this is so often the case. The Beartooth Highway, along with Dunraven Pass, will be the 2 last roads to open. So if you are coming down from the northeast if you're coming down from the northeastern United States. So you can see you would be coming in on US 90, you would branch off, get down to Red Lodge, and the Beartooth Highway really is one of the most spectacular roads in the entire country. The views are just unbelievable. And if we go back to the map that you can see at ysmotel.com/map, you'll notice they actually say here, Beartooth Highway closed from mid-October to late May. So that's something else that you can do. Then while we're in that area as well, something that I like to do at least once a year is a triangle. I'll come up from West Yellowstone, which is where I live and where our motel is, and once again check out our motel at Y for Yankee, S for Sierra, ysmotel.com. I'll come in, drive up to the northeast entrance, and then from the northeast entrance, I'll leave the park and then take this road that you see in white over here. And you'll notice how there's switchbacks and it twists and it turns. It's also a truly spectacular road, and that is what's known as the Chief Joseph Highway. The views, once again, are just awesome. So head out of the park, take the Chief Joseph Highway. You'll stop so often along the way to admire the views. Maybe take a picnic lunch with you and enjoy it along the way. Then you'll meet up with Road 120, which will take you down into Cody, Wyoming. If you do have time, Cody is a fascinating little town, and you'll see here there's something called the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. I'm not going to go into that in detail here, but there are 5 museums at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. There's a Western Firearm Museum, Native American Museum, and it is well worth spending time there. Then we'll leave Cody, travel west, and we'll eventually land up at Yellowstone's east entrance. And those of you who've seen or listened to various of my other podcasts will know that I recommend the area just outside the east entrance as being great grizzly bear terrain. And if I'm trying to remember which of our videos it was, actually it wasn't the northeast entrance, it's the east entrance. And I don't know if it's going to come up here because there'll be so many different options. But if you search for a video from Fishing Bridge to Yellowstone's east entrance, oops, and we're pretty close to finding it. That is the one that goes the other way, the Yellowstone's east entrance to Fishing Bridge. Okay, so here it is here, Fishing Bridge to Yellowstone's east entrance. And I know, guys, that I am getting a little sidetracked here. And also this video, for whatever reason, doesn't want to load. But have a look at the video, Fishing Bridge to Yellowstone's east entrance. And just outside the east entrance, I so often like to go take a picnic. You'll see an old ski area next to the side of the road. Here it is, right over here. And there is a place that you can pull out. This is the video here. That was the ski area in the back there. And they have these placards, by the way, warning you about the possibility of grizzlies in the area and telling you to be careful. So if you're there at sunrise or sunset, keep your eyes open and carry bear spray with you. Whenever you're in an area where you're by yourselves and you may come across bears, make sure you carry bear spray. You can either buy it, or our company actually rents it as well. You can see it at YellowstoneBearSprayRentals.com. That's YellowstoneBearSprayRentals.com. But once again, I'm afraid I got sidetracked. I was telling you about that giant triangle road, that triangle loop that I take. So from Cody, I'll head west and come back into the park at the east entrance. So once again, you'll leave the park at Silvergate at the northeast entrance, take the Chief Joseph Highway, make your way down to Cody, head west, come in at the east entrance. So guys, to recap, If you only have a really short period of time available, 1 day or half a day, which is just criminal, but if that's the case, I suggest that you do Yellowstone's lower loop because that is where most of the thermal features are to be found. If you have 2 days, try the lower loop on 1 day, try the upper loop on another day. If you have 3 days, you can consider heading down to Grand Teton National Park. Remember, from West Thumb Geyser Basin, you head south over the Rockefeller Parkway. That'll take you to Grand Teton. And then if you've got a 4th, 5th, or 6th days, consider the wolves in the Lamar Valley. You can go fishing. You can spend your time taking photographs. You can do hikes, which once again you can see at YellowstoneDayHikes.com. That's YellowstoneDayHikes.com. Guys, if you have any specific queries, anything that you want to know about how much time you should spend in Yellowstone, just please make a note in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching another Yellowstone podcast.